Welcome to the World News. I'm Randolf Jamias for today's global stories. The start of Cambodian Foreign Affairs Minister Hor Nam Hong met Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra on Wednesday to strengthen ties between the two countries. High on the agenda during Nam Hong's two-day trip was discussing opportunities for more land connections between Thailand and Cambodia, including railway extensions and highway construction. Meanwhile, Laos President Shumali Sayason met Vietnam's General Secretary of the Communist Party, Win Pu Chong, on Wednesday to boost bilateral ties. Officials said the Laos government will implement agreements signed with the Vietnamese government, consolidate and strengthen bilateral ties and cooperation between the two countries. Sayason was greeted in Hanoi by a welcoming ceremony and inspected honor guards with Chong before meeting with Vietnamese officials. Researchers at Stanford University have developed a method to predict a child's ability to learn to read. By studying MRI scans to track brain development, the researchers say they can identify struggling students earlier and offer the help they need to improve. Ned Gruber with the story.
It's reading time at the Lehrman Day School in Miami Beach. The toddlers are just starting to develop their reading skills, and it's too early for their teachers to tell if any of them will have difficulties going forward. Across the country at Stanford University, researcher Jason Yateman is developing a method that may one day give teachers a look into the future, a way to predict a child's reading ability.
What we'd really like to be able to do is predict who's going to struggle before they start struggling, and then develop an intervention basically to target their brain development before they've actually started to show the behavioral symptoms.
Yateman says a child's ability to read can be predicted by studying the development of the connections within their brain. He says reading requires different parts of the brain to work together. So he, along with Professor Brian Wandel, conducted a study using MRI scans to track and map brain development.
People had been looking at activity in the brain for a long time, but the thing that we could do that was a little unique and pretty much for the first time was study the properties of the wires as they develop in the brain, and that's a whole new thing.
We can make measurements of the connections between different brain regions, regions that we understand quite well, and look at the properties of these connections and use those to actually predict how well a given child is going to learn to read.
But Yateman admits measuring brain development is easier said than done. The team needed to find a way to keep track of how quickly the essential neural pathways needed for reading were maturing. He says it came in the form of water.
What we're actually measuring in the type of images we collect is water diffusion. We're measuring the rate at which water molecules are moving through the brain. And this is really fascinating because, as you know, the brain is filled with water, and water is constantly bumping into the local environment. By knowing how water diffuses in a given region, we can infer a lot about how cells are organized, how densely packed they are, how coherently organized they are.
And by knowing how well these neural pathways are developing, the researchers can tell if a child will struggle with reading. And Professor Wendell says, even more importantly, give teachers other options to educate their students.
So if you knew much sooner, this child is not going to do well at reading, this child's going to need help, you might do stuff like try to get them the information that they need to know using something that doesn't involve a lot of reading, using sound, using images, using other methods.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yateman and Wandel are now looking to develop behavioral tests to collect data needed to predict reading ability. They hope that in the future, science will ensure that when it comes to reading, no child is left behind.
In other news, Russia's Far East now has a new railway tunnel. The opening hopes of greater chance of transportation capacity to boost trade with Asia.
The railway connecting eastern Siberia and the Far East is a key logistics route for coal, timber, and other goods. But long trains cannot use the route. That's because the Khabarovsk section has many steep slopes and curves. To deal with the handicap, the 3,890-meter tunnel has been built on the Baikal-Amur railway line, which is in the mountainous areas of the Khabarovsk region. The new tunnel will allow 80-car freight trains to travel directly to ports on the Pacific coast. The railway operator says the freight volume on the Baikal-Amur line will increase by nearly 20%.
China, in the meantime, on Wednesday, began operations of the world's longest high-speed rail link that connects the Chinese capital of Beijing in the north and the southern metropolis of Guangzhou. The almost 3,000 line cuts travel time between the two cities from more than 20 hours to 8 hours on trains that run at 300 kilometers per hour. The link, passing through 28 cities in 6 provinces, has the capacity of transporting over 200,000 passengers a day and is expected to ease overcrowding in passenger transport during travel peaks. The ministry plans to spend a total of 630 billion yuan in 2012 and has been given clearance to sell more bonds to finance the investments. Moving now to Denmark, many of the Silicon Valley high-tech executives are playing with the low-tech, nonetheless technical toy that's still a hot seller after more than half a century. Let's travel to Denmark, the birthplace of this toy icon.
Coined the toy of the century by Fortune magazine, Legos keep kids and adults busy for hours. This Christmas season, an average 28 sets will be sold every second. Legos got their start here in Billund, Denmark in the 1930s when carpenter Ole Kirk Christensen and his sons went beyond wooden toys to delve into plastics. Danish for leg godt, or play well, the family business underwent key developments throughout the years, including the introduction of wheels, minifigures, and a crucial tweak to the brick. Any brick pressed from the 60s onward will interlock with a brick pressed today. At the flagship factory, 3,500 employees make sure machines run 24 hours a day to produce 2.5 million pieces per hour. If all the minifigures produced this year were lined up next to each other, they'd stretch from this Denmark factory to Dallas, Texas, nearly 8,000 kilometers. This Christmas, Friends and Ninjago lines are expected to be popular, particularly in Asia's markets. Other classics are also expected to continue doing well. Designers work 2 years in advance, sticking to stringent quality standards. They stay ahead of the curve by listening to the customer.
I think the importance of how much we involve the children in the different markets, asking them what is the best type of concept, how can we do police the best way or fire the best way. So we really involve our consumers quite a lot.
Despite tough economic times, the private Lego group holds a 7.1% global toy market share, and sales were up last year by 17%. For the customer, that translates into playtime.
You can unbuild them, and you can build stuff too and play with them. I like Lego boys because then they can marry the girls.
The Lego motto is inspiring builders of tomorrow. If the claim that 6 bricks can be combined in 915 million different ways is true, then the tools are clearly in place. Stephanie Fried, CCTV, Denmark.
And that's the first half of our stories. Don't go away. We'll be back shortly.